I'll hold those questions here until the end of the presentation, and then we'll send them off to Hank. So with that, I am going to go ahead and pass it off from a kind of a cold and a little bit snowy Virginia, Washington, D.C. area out west of California, and Hank Garretson, Whiskey 6 Sugar X-Ray. I think Hank is near Yosemite. He's done some of these presentations before for NCCC, Northern California Contest Club, and he did one for this group some time back. I don't remember the date on it, Hank, but I went and looked, and it was actually on how to have fun with sprints. So Hank's an old hand at this. He's got some good information to share with everyone. So with that, I'm going to shut up. Hank, the floor is yours. Go ahead and take it.
Hello, everyone. Yes, we're about 30 miles due east of Yosemite Valley here. Tonight what I'm going to do is tell you about an antenna exercise that I did in 2010. First, a disclaimer. I do live at 8,000 feet elevation in John Muir's range of life, but it doesn't help. 8,000 feet is a very small fraction of the height of the ionosphere. The extra elevation has negligible effect. What is important is close-in surrounding terrain. Although I'm going to talk about what I did to my antenna, what's important to you is the process. What I did and what I'm going to talk about tonight is just an example of the process. Everybody can use the process to good advantage. So what is the process? The first is to evaluate your present situations. Next, objectives. Figure out what it is you want your antenna to do. Do you want to work contests? If so, DX, domestic. Do you want to just work DX? Do you want to rag chew? Do you want to work traffic nets? You have to figure out what you want your antenna to do for you. Next is analysis, and that really should read brainstorm and analysis, because what you want to do in this part of the process is just think out of the box and consider any possibilities that might make your antenna work better, and then you can analyze those candidates. Once you're done with the analysis, you pick the best one, and you build the antenna, and then you test it, and then you look at the results and see if it really does what you want to do. So let's look at how I went through this process here at W6SX. I live in a single-family house on a very small lot in a residential neighborhood. Kind of looks like this. There's my house right there. A little bit bigger picture. Whoops, let's go back. Yeah, a little bigger picture is here's the house here, and about 2 miles more or less west of me is the 11,000 foot Mammoth Mountain peak. All of this white stuff in here are the ski trails on Mammoth Mountain. Not shown here to the east and to the south are lots more mountains. Here's another way to look at it, the topography. I'm somewhere down in here. Again, Mammoth Mountain at 11,000 feet is here. I'm here at 8, and then very close to me to the east and to the south are more 10,000 foot mountains. But there is one little window of opportunity here kind of to the east, and that's what turned out to be my saving grace. So the next part of the W6SX situation is no towers, no masts. I won't have any towers or masts as long as I'm here in Mammoth. Geez, it keeps doing things on me. I'm not sure why. I do have 2 Jeffrey pine trees separated by about 93 feet. We do have very severe weather here. 2 years ago we had 54 54 feet of snow. We get very high and very gusty winds. Here's what it looks like many mornings during the winter here in Mammoth. And that's the snow part of it. And here's the wind part of it. Same picture, but notice that there's really not very much snow on top of the roof, and that's because we get very high winds, very gusty winds. Most of the snow gets blown off. What that means is that one of my requirements is to have a very robust antennas that are going to stay up in the winter. I don't want to be out there in the middle of a blizzard in the middle of the winter fixing an antenna. Also, while we're looking at this slide, you can see this pine tree here and this pine tree here. Those are the two supports for my antenna. So back in 2010, I started with my original antenna, which was an 80-meter dipole, 46 feet high, fed with poly ladder line, and I used matchboxes to work all the bands. Just a second, I'm going to see if I can stop it from standby one here. Okay, so that's what my antenna looked like in 2010. Just a second, I think I know what's happening. Standby one.
Yeah, that snow is makes it a little bit we get out here every year, Hank, look minuscule,
Yeah,
and it actually is. It's pretty impressive.
Okay. Advanced slide automatically. On mouse click. That's what I want. Okay. Sorry, gentlemen. So let's go back to slide slow. I think this is going to work a little better now. Okay, so there was my antenna in 2010, 80-meter dipole, 46 feet high, fed with ladder line. That's doing it again. Anyway, here's a schematic representation of the antenna. Here's the lot, 110 by 68 feet. The north is to the top. This is the house here, the pine tree here, and I really lucked out. This one's right on the property line. I have two 39-foot flat top segments, and to get a full 80-meter dipole, two 29-foot dog legs that go to the north here and the south here, sloping down at about 45 degrees. So the process. What you need to do then is say, well, what do I want to do with my antenna? In my case, given I don't have any beams and given the surrounding mountains, I reluctantly but realistically decided to focus on domestic contests. And I said, okay, 80 and 10-meter contest bands are good enough. I don't do anything but contests, really, a little bit of traffic, but mostly just contests, so I'm not really interested in the WWROF bands. You're going to be different. You have to come up with your own objectives. And then another objective was to beam 070. If you're going to do domestic contests, if you live in California, and if you don't have a beam, you want to squirt as much RF as possible in the 070 direction. So here I am in Northern California, and most of the population density is in this area here, which is 070. And then low takeoff angles. Generally, low takeoff angles are better than high. I didn't spend very much time on this because with an antenna only 46 feet high, takeoff angles are going to be what they're going to be. So next step in the process is analysis, and again, this is, I really should say, brainstorm and analysis. You want to just think outside the box and let as many ideas as you can get come into your head, and then analyze those possibilities. Let me get that phone disconnected. So I used NEC, which is Numerical Electromagnetics Code. NEC 2 is the latest version of that that's in the public domain. There are two very good programs that hams use. One is EasyNEC, the other is 4NEC 2. I really want to emphasize that modeling is your best friend, but it's not rocket science, especially for simple antennas. My mantra for modeling is keep it simple, sir, but also keep in mind Albert Einstein, who says something to the effect that make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. So first I modeled my original antenna. I started with a dipole file that came with NEC 2, and I changed the length and height to match my antenna. So here's my antenna again. I've got the 39-foot segments and the flat top, and then the two dog legs to make a full 80-meter dipole. And here is the NEC input file that I created. It's really pretty simple. You've got the wire, the top line, wire number 1 is the flat top section, and then wires 2 and 3 are the two dog legs. Note that I have my antenna made with number 10 wire. I really don't want it to break. And note that it really only took me maybe 90 minutes. I didn't know anything about modeling. I'd never done it before, but from the time I started to try and create that file I just showed you to the time I created this plot here only took me about 90 minutes. It really isn't rocket science, and you don't need to be an Einstein. So here's my original antenna on 80 meters. The again, north is at the top of the page. Intensity scale here, the brighter it is, the more energy there is. These show the segments of the antenna, the top and then the two dog legs. And so on 80 meters, not surprisingly, for an antenna that's only about an eighth of a wavelength high, it's pretty much omnidirectional. It's pretty much omnidirectional, and also most of the energy is squirting straight up. Basically, I've got a cloud warmer, and I'm very, very loud over in the Bay Area, but not so good in other directions. So let's look at 40. Here's 40 meters. 40 meters, 46 feet high is about a third of a wavelength. Takeoff angles have come down here and here, and we're starting to see a little bit of directivity, but not very much, which again is to be expected for an antenna only a third of a wavelength high. So here is 20 meters. Now 20 meters, the antenna is about 3/4 of a wavelength high. The takeoff angles have come way, way down here and here, but again, and we're starting to see some directivity, but again, most of it is north and south. Here's 15 meters. 15 meters, the antenna is about a wavelength high, so we've got low takeoff angles here, 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 and another one hidden back here, and we're starting to get some azimuth lobing, which is to be expected for an antenna that's about 3 wavelengths in length. So here's 10 meters, and what can I say? At 10 meters, the antenna is about 1.5 wavelengths high. The main lobes here, 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 and another one under here are very, very low. We're getting lots of azimuth lobing. Again, the antenna is fairly long. And because the antenna is relatively high, we're also getting elevation lobing. There's 15 meters again. I'm not sure why that is. Oh, here we go. Okay, so that was analysis of my first antenna. So then I brainstormed, and because it was the beginning of winter and I really wanted to get something done, I really only looked at 2 candidates, or at least only analyzed 2 candidates, candidate 1 and candidate 2. I'll show you that in a minute, but first let's talk about HFTA, High Frequency Terrain Assessment. It's a wonderful program by Dean Straw, N6BV. With some help from Dean, I looked at my situation here using HFTA, and basically it confirmed that beaming 070 and domestic contests were the way to go for W6SX. I didn't spend a lot of time with HFTA because I couldn't adjust antenna height. I can't stack antennas. Nevertheless, HFTA should be a major part of any antenna project. So, having looked at my original antenna, I brainstormed 2 antennas and I modeled them. And the one I started to work with next, or the one I decided on, was candidate 2. So here's candidate 2, my original antenna, and then what I did is I added parallel inverted V elements for 40 and 20. So this red line here is a 32-foot, 40-meter inverted V element sloping down at about 45 degrees, and parallel to it is a 16-foot, 20-meter inverted V element. Same thing here, 32 feet 40 element and a 16-foot 20-meter element. And I was constrained where I could put this set of elements by the house. This one I could put wherever I wanted, so I put it here, and notice that if you split the difference between here, broadside to those 2 inverted V elements is going to be at about 0.70. So I modeled that, and just again, here is the input file for the candidate 2 antenna, and it's basically pretty simple. It's mostly an exercise in trigonometry, and don't be intimidated by modeling. Modeling is an essential part of it, and it's not hard to do. You just need to jump in and try it. So next thing I did as part of the analysis was compare my original antenna with the new candidate 2 antenna. Here's the comparison on 80 meters, and as expected, no difference. I didn't change the antenna as far as 80 meters is concerned, so everything's the same. But let's look at 40. On 40 meters, if you look here, the red is the candidate antenna and the blue is the old antenna. And notice in the desired 070 direction, I've picked up about, the numbers say, about 6 dB or an S unit towards the populated areas, which is exactly what I was hoping to do. 20 meters, same sort of thing, even a little more dramatic. Instead of squirting mostly north and south, I'm now squirting at 0.70 and get about 8 dB advantage with the new candidate antenna. 15 meters, if you do the numbers right here at 0.70, you get about, I've picked up about 7 dB, but notice I'm still squirting most of the energy up here at 35 degrees or so, more towards Europe than towards the population areas. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. 10 meters, same thing. 10 meters, I gained about 9 dB here between the original antenna and the candidate antenna, but I'm still squirting a lot of energy up here. I'd prefer to have that lobe down here. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. So, the next step in the process is test. I spent most of my working life testing and measuring things, including being in charge of 2 large outdoor antenna ranges, one for the Air Force and one for Northrop Grumman. I really like real data. I cringe every time I read an antenna article somewhere that gives results, say like, this antenna really works. I got Kuwait on the first call with only 5 watts. That doesn't hack it for me. I want to see real data. So most antenna ranges compare the antenna under test to a reference antenna, which is often a standardized dipole. And that's called A/B testing. But the question was, how could I do A/B testing? I didn't, I only had one antenna, either my original antenna or when I built the new antenna, and there was no way I could switch between them. Well, my good friend and at the time fellow Mammoth person, Roger Cooper, N3RC, came to the rescue, and he suggested ABC. What we did was, Roger was C. He transmitted from his home station using his antenna, which never changed, and then we compared A, my original antenna, to his antenna C, and then we compared B, my candidate antenna, to his antenna C. And we used the reverse beacon network. The reverse beacon network is a wonderful, wonderful tool, but you have to be careful. Just a few test points with reverse beacon network won't work. For instance, if you call test and get a hit on RBN, and then 30 seconds later do test again and get another hit, often the 2 signals, the 2 hits will be off by, they won't be the same, and often they'll be off by quite a few dB. And so the way to get around this is you need lots and lots and lots of test points, and you have to look at the data statistically and looking for trends. You can't work with just a few test points. So here's what Roger and I did. We took data with the original antenna. Roger was at his station using his antenna, which never changed, and he was the reference. And we took, and I was here, and we'd start at the low end of a band. I'd send test. Roger would send test on the same frequency. We'd move up 1 kilohertz. I'd send test. He'd send test. And we did that all the way up the band on every single band. And then we did that 2 or 3 times to get lots and lots of data. Then we took down my original antenna. We put the inverted V elements, connected them to the feed point, hoisted the antenna up, and we did the same thing again. We took lots and lots of data the same way, and then just to be sure, we took the antenna down, we took the inverted V elements off of it, we took more data points, then we put the inverted V elements back on, and we repeated it, and in the end, we took hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of test points. I might mention that back in 2010, I had to analyze all of those test points by hand and manually. Today, things are a little bit easier because RBN now has a signal comparison tool, and it also has the capability that you can download a day's worth of data, stick it into an Excel spreadsheet, and really do some more sophisticated analysis. In any case, the results. Well, based on the test data that Roger and I took, I did indeed have 6 dB or more additional signal in the desired 070 heading on 40, 20, 15, and 10, just like the modeling said that I would. As Roger says, it was dB for free because all I really did was add some simple inverted V elements that squirted the energy where it was going to do me the most good in domestic contests, which was my design goal. And the antenna works. I made 1,616 contacts in the California QSO party, 1,139 contacts in the CW sweepstakes. In the real world, the antenna works. Mission accomplished. So, the important part of what I'm trying to tell you here is not what I did, but the process. What I did worked for me, and I hope I may have given you some ideas, and maybe, you know, the idea is to think outside the box and to brainstorm and then go through the process. The important part is to go through the process and do the process. And I've added a little note here. One thing that's really important is extra brains. Extra brains will come up with wild ideas that you might not think of and can make or break it. So, epilogue. You might remember on 10 meters, I did get some extra gain in the 070 direction, but I was still squirting mostly up here in the 35-degree area. So I added some 10-meter elements and moved these lobes down to here, which made things even better. And some more things I've done since 2010 for convenience and robustness. I replaced the ladder line feed with RG213. I have used the antenna as a 160-meter T fed against a single 134-foot elevated counterpoise. It works, at least stateside. Worked all states in one weekend, which brings me to this, which is don't let the naysayers keep you down. My antenna shouldn't work that well on 160, but it gets out. So my advice is build the best you can and then go for it. You can do a lot if you use the process. And here's the process again, and I've added one more item down at the bottom, which is repeat. And I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. But analysis, again, extra brains are very, very, very helpful. They help you think outside of the box, and you can bounce back and forth from your brain to the other brains, and it really helps. But the process is something that's an ongoing thing, and at least for me, I'm never done, and I keep trying to think of new ways to make the system better. And here's the thing that I'm going to do next is sort of what I did for 10 meters. If I can figure out a way to make it robust mechanically, I want to add now a 15-meter element. Instead of using the 40-meter element on 15, I want to add a 15-meter element. And although I haven't modeled it yet, I'm pretty sure that will bring this lobe down here into the 070 region, which is what I want to do. So that's the next thing on my agenda, but it's not going to happen until next spring. Thank you. I couldn't have done this without the help of my brain trust. These 6 gentlemen were invaluable through the whole process. Roger Cooper was, without Roger it wouldn't have happened. He was a brain. He was here helping me cut wire, standing in the snow, and he helped me with the ABC comparison. Thank you very, very much, Roger, and thank you to the other 5 gentlemen. Before I leave this page, I'll mention that the 3 guys here at the bottom, Bill, Bud, and Jim, were all teenage contest and traffic buddies back in upstate New York, and 50+ years later they're still my good friends, and that's what makes ham radio such a wonderful, wonderful hobby. So I'm ready for comments and questions.
Okay, Hank, very good. So here we are. If you have any questions for Hank, let's go ahead and shoot those in. If you've got a microphone connected to your computer and you want to try to talk directly to us, we can give that a shot tonight too. Everyone that's on this presentation, whether you have a microphone connected or not, is muted, and that's controlled from this end. So if you've got a microphone connected and you'd like to try to talk to us directly, you've got a little hand icon like you're sitting in a classroom. Go ahead and click on that, and I will try to bring you in at some point. We can give that a shot as well. So anyways, you know, I was looking at those snowdrifts again, Hank, and I got to think you could put your snowshoes on and climb up there. You'd probably have a pretty easy time working on the antenna with with those. The other thing too, if you're sending in a question, I've got a few here already, don't worry about it, but if you're in the process of sending one in, put your call sign at the end of it, because we just get the name, otherwise we're not quite sure who it is. So, okay, here we go, Hank. First one is, did ground radials come into play, or was your horizontal dipole ground independent, and was any part of your antenna in a vertical plane?
The only time ground radials came into play was for 160 meters. The rest of the time I had no radials or anything, and so basically the antenna was working as a horizontal dipole or the inverted V elements, although there were some perturbations caused by the two dog legs on 80 meters, which perturbated the pattern a little bit, but I don't think it really affected very much. The ground here is pretty much granite, and I just used the antenna as a balanced antenna with no radials at all, except for 160 meters when I used a single elevated counterpoise.
Okay, someone was wondering about the topography window that you had. Was that done in HFTA, or what did you use to do that?
That was not done with HFTA. That was there is a website somewhere on the web that will do that, and if someone is interested, I can dig that up. Basically, you put in your lat long, and the website will spit out plots like I showed here. If someone wants to know that website, send me an email and ask me, and I'll look it up for you. I think I have it bookmarked, and you can reach me at W6SX at ARRL.net.
Okay, next question from Donald, November 4, Tango Zulu Hotel. Did you consider a vertical antenna?
I did, but I rejected it. One, I didn't want to have to deal with guys. Two, the base of the antenna during much of the winter would be under 10 or so feet of snow, and some of the guys who brainstormed with me suggested putting a vertical on top of the roof of the antenna. I'm sorry, on top of the roof of the house, which is aluminum roof. But I rejected that because, again, there is some snow up there, although not a lot, but I would have to guy it. Access to it would be difficult, and I was awfully concerned about a million little diodes conducting or not conducting between the various parts of the roof, which would be part of the ground plane. So for those reasons, I did not go the vertical route.
Okay, very
Although,
good. Go ahead.
I will say that on 160 meters, my feed line going up to the antenna is essentially a vertical, top-loaded vertical on 160.
Okay, W9ILY, I was wondering, how did you separate the wire elements?
Hi, I'll see you tomorrow in the CWTs. The first way I did it, when I just used the 80 and, or I'm sorry, when I just did the 40 and 20 meter elements, is I used poly ladder line. So I took a 32-foot piece of poly ladder line, cut half of it away, or one wire of it away, to make the 16-foot 20-meter element, and that worked fine and was robust. Then the problems, or the reasons I changed, were that the poly line, when it got wet, I'd have to retune all the match boxes, which I didn't like to do. I have instant band change here with 5 different match boxes that get switched in automatically, and I didn't like having to retune the match boxes. That's one of the reasons I went to coax for the feed line. And but additionally, that was only two wire elements. So when I decided I wanted to add 10 meters, I ended up using a product called ladder snaps, which are about 3 inches long, and you can snap house number 14 gauge house wiring into them to form ladder line. And what I did is I used a triangle of them, so I could have a 40 meter, a 20 meter, and a 10 meter element. Those haven't turned out to be as robust as I like, and that's another project for next spring. But if you only have 2 elements and you don't mind retuning, ladder line works great.
Okay, next question from Howard, Kilo Charlie 3 Delta. How do you think the new elements would have functioned without the original dipole?
I think the new elements without the dipole would function pretty much just like they modeled there, which is to say they would still be squirting in the 070 direction. Essentially, the dipole, being an 80-meter dipole, doesn't take any power, or absorbs very little power on the other bands, and is simply acting as a support for the inverted V elements.
Okay, Rick, Alpha India 1 Victor, could you describe the added inverted V elements in a little more detail? The diagram seemed to only show 2 legs, not 4.
Yeah, that's right. Each of those red lines on the diagram is really a parallel inverted V element. One of the wires in that parallel inverted element is 32 feet long, and the other one, 1.5 inches, or now 3 inches away, is the 20-meter element. And now, more recently, I have additionally a third wire, which is like 8 feet long, which is the 10-meter element. So really, right now, what I have is a triangle that starts at the feed line with about 3 inches on each side. It goes for 8 feet with 3 wires, and at that point the 10-meter element ends, and I just have 2 parallel wires 3 inches apart that go for another 8 feet out to 16 feet, which is the end of the 20-meter element, and then just a single wire continues on out for another 16 feet to make 32 feet for the 40-meter element.
Someone had a good suggestion, Hank. Maybe you can back up your slides to the diagram of the current antenna, and I guess people can get an additional look at it. But that may help as you're describing some of this as well. I see we've got at least one person with their hand up. Hang on, we'll get to you in a second here. Jack W0 Uniform Charlie Echo. What matchboxes, tuners did you use?
Okay, well, while I've got this up here before it automatically changes on me again. So this red line here is consists now of 3 wires, and for the first 8 feet there are 3 wires, and then for the next 8 feet there are 2 wires, and then finally for the last 16 feet there's only 1 wire, and those are 3 parallel wires that are about 3 inches apart. If that doesn't ask the question, go ahead and ask a follow-up. Jack, I'll see you tomorrow in CWT also. What I have here is 5 Johnson kilowatt matchboxes, one for 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10. And then I have a Nye Viking matchbox that I use on 160 meters. And those guys are automatically switched in using outputs from the K3. So each one is switched in according to which band the K3 is, so I have instant band change.
Okay, Mike, VE9 Alpha Alpha says maybe you could add more passive, oops, hang on here, more passive directors for bands like 15 meters. And he says, by the way, thanks for all the contest QSOs.
Well, thank you. That's certainly a possibility. The problem is I don't really have support for them, and that's my main issue is I lack support.
Okay, Jim, K5ND is wondering if you have any photos of the current setup, maybe not here, but on a web page or something they could access them?
I do not. That's one of my projects, but I suppose I could go out there tomorrow. There's only about 3 feet of snow so far. I'll trounce out tomorrow, and I can take a picture looking up at the elements and give people a little bit better idea of what it looks like.
I'll have you know the. Go ahead.
You can tell me where we might post it.
Yeah, we can talk about that offline and find a place. I have you know the federal government in Washington shut down today over what 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of snow. Yeah, no comment necessary. David is asking how or where did you get the idea of adding inverted V elements for the individual bands to your antenna?
Well, this was part of the brainstorming process. Once I went through started the process, and I said, okay, I can't have a beam. I'm pretty much limited with my antenna the way it is now, as far as I got the 2 trees, and I need to go with those. And then I said, okay, I want to do domestic contests, and the received wisdom from all the old timers at NCCC is you want to beam 070. So I looked at all of the plots I had for my original antenna, and we can look at some of those here again real quick. Like here, I looked at 40 meters and I said, gee, I'm not beaming anything at 070. I'm trying to work the polar bears in the North Pole and the penguins in the South Pole. That's not what I want. And then I went through all the bands and I saw, you're not really squirting much energy at 070. So what I did, and real quickly, my candidate one, which I haven't really talked about, was, well, I said, well, I can't do much on 80 meters, but what if I just make an inverted V that's like this? And so that was an easy, obvious first step, and that was a good first step, because what it did is now it took this red lobe here and it was going east and west, and I said, well, that's an improvement over north and south. But then I said, well, if I can just tweak this element here, this element I didn't have any degrees of freedom, but if I can tweak this element from here over like this and split this difference at 0.70, maybe it's going to work. So I modeled that, and it did exactly what I wanted to do. So that was kind of the thought process, and I actually came up with that on my own. But if you have a bunch of brains working with you, there may be other things I could do. I just haven't come up with them yet.
Okay. Okay, yeah, Jim K5ND says, great photo of the W6SX shack on QRZ.com with all the matchboxes. So, okay, John, we've just got a couple more questions here. We'll go ahead and wrap this up. Kilo Charlie Zero Bravo Mike Fox. This is a good question because I know it comes up with the club here regarding sweepstakes. But he says, when using your 40-meter 10 on 15, which should have been a cloud warmer, how did it work for close-in contacts? He says he has a problem with surrounding states for multipliers during CQ Worldwide RTTY. Because I guess what you originally had was a cloud warmer, and you kind of got away from that. Is that, did you?
Well, I'm not sure. It wasn't a cloud warmer so much on, let's go back and take a quick look. I'm going the wrong way. The antenna was a cloud warmer. Here we go. The antenna was a big cloud warmer on 80 meters. Not so much on 40, but it certainly wasn't a cloud warmer on 20, 15, or 10. And on 80 meters, at least for sweepstakes on 80 meters, although it's a cloud warmer, I've never had any trouble picking up all the close-in multipliers. The guys I have trouble with are Newfoundland and northern New York, for crying out loud.
Yeah, we had a similar discussion here. I think it was regarding sweepstakes. I forget which band, and sometimes it comes in handy, especially if you're in a more highly populated area like we are. Okay, last question again from John W9ILY, asking if you considered using PVC pipe to separate the elements, just like Alpha Delta does.
Yes, in fact. Perhaps a month ago, I went down to the local hardware store and looked at the things that were available, and that's my project for the spring, which is to use PVC so I can add in a robust fashion the 15-meter elements. So yes, that's a great suggestion, and that's next on my to-do list. I will get back, and that was a great comment on, what I analyzed here was for my situation. But say if you're on the East Coast where and you want to do sweepstakes, you're gonna want different things. You probably don't want your 20-meter antenna super high, or you probably want two antennas, a high 20-meter and a low 20-meter, because you want the high 20-meter to work out to the West Coast and stuff, but you want a lower antenna so that you can work all the high-density stuff there. And so that's what the process is all about. You need to evaluate what are your objectives and then figure out what antennas are going to satisfy those objectives.
Okay, very good, Hank. Well, that does it. I just wanted to thank you for being with us and offering this presentation, the work you put into pulling the presentation together and being here. Lots of good practical advice, which I'm sure a lot of people can use. So thanks once again, and hope to have you back some other time for something else. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
Just thank you, everybody, and have a good holiday, and look for me in the next contest.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, several people have asked, and just as a reminder, and you can pass it along to your friends and other members in the club, that this presentation is recorded. It will be posted on the Worldwide Radio Operator Foundation webpage, WWROF.org, under the webinars link. And that should be up in the next 24 or 48 hours. Just kind of depends how busy the webmaster is, but we'll have the presentation posted there. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We will have some additional presentations coming up. I'm working on scheduling a few things. Nothing that I can share with you at the moment. We don't have it nailed down, but there's some more good topics coming up. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Thank you very much, Hank. Appreciate all your work. And we will see everyone next time. Take care. Bye-bye.